At some point in my career, I learned that there's a way that you can get your prospects to sell your product or your solution to themselves by simply asking the right questions. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Pretty much every professional career has these kind of pivotal moments where you take a quantum leap in terms of performance, in terms of results, in terms of skills and expertise. These moments where when you look back, you kind of know that from that moment in time onwards, things really took a change for the better. One of these moments for me was when I figured out that there is a particular segment or type of questions that when you ask them, they matter a whole lot more than some of the other questions. They are catalysts, they pack a punch, and they have the potential to actually bring a massive high stakes deal home, or at least push it massively in the right direction. I want to talk about these questions today, and I want to talk about where I came across them as well, because I think that as well is going to be valuable for the ones that wouldn't have come across that particular piece of content. So I came across these questions in a book called Spin Selling. Now, Spin Selling is a book written by a guy called Neil Rackham. It's a little bit dated, but I think the methodology still stands rock solid to date. It's particularly applicable if you operate in a so-called high-stakes business-to-business environment, an enterprise sales environment. Now, I really love this book because it is actually founded and based in real-life data. Neil Rackham and his team analyzed about 35,000 sales interactions in that high-stake business-to-business environment, and the lessons and the methodology of the spin selling way, or the spin way of selling, is drawn from that data. So they kind of dissected the calls that worked, the ones that didn't work, and they uncovered the patterns. And so the spin selling methodology is based on real life data, real life successful sales interactions. So if you haven't come across this book, do yourself a massive favor, go and read it. If you've already read it, I would recommend you read it again. That's what I try and do at least 2-3 times a year. And every time I do, I come across another couple of nuggets that I can use and implement in my business. So as with everything here on the channel, this is also something that we very heavily use at my agency, Pago Consulting. 7 years ago, I founded that business, and we help young bootstrapped companies improve their business-to-business sales performance. We use the spin selling methodology when and if we have to help our clients with actual sales interactions, with demonstrations, presentations. So again, as with anything else on this channel, the stuff that I talk about is the stuff that we have learned over the past 7 years, the things that we see that actually work and move the needle. And those are the topics that I try and share here on the channel. If you think that is interesting, check out some of the other videos on the channel. And if you find them valuable to some extent, consider subscribing so you will be kept updated whenever I release a new piece of content. So spin selling, spin is actually an acronym for S stands for situation, P stands for problem, I stands for implication, and N stands for need payoff. And it's the I and N part, the implication questions and the need payoff questions, that I want to focus on today, because it's when I learned about those types of questions that I realized that, holy smokes, this is a whole different game. This is where the rubber hits the road, and it's the salespeople that ask these questions, that master the way to ask these questions, that really truly are the top performers, are the ones that get the excellent and above average results. Now, the S and the P, situation and problem questions, are typically the questions that I'll say lesser experienced salespeople find comfortable, find easy to ask. We all kind of go about asking people about the situation, kind of talking a little bit about the problems. That's all fine. But what most salespeople do at that moment in time is they move right on to the pitch and they present. And sometimes that's enough, but most of the time they haven't really done enough digging. They haven't really properly grabbed the prospect with them to take them on a journey to truly see what the future could be like. And that's exactly what these I and N type questions do. They talk about the future state. They kind of get your prospect to talk about what would happen once the problem has been solved, and what would happen if they were to not act and leave the problem as it is. What are the potential consequences? Now, that does two things. One, it will get them to feel and really think about the severity of not acting, which allocates and attributes more value to the actual solution. And then the other ones, when you get them to talk about what would happen once the problem is solved, that's the type of question that gets them to start selling the solution to themselves. When you ask somebody what would happen once this problem is solved, what other areas of your business might it positively affect. They'll go and think about that, and when they answer that question, they're essentially starting to run the equation. They're essentially, starting to sell the solution to yourselves. And make no mistake about this, at this moment in time in the entire sales interaction, in your script, if you'd like, you haven't actually presented, you haven't demonstrated, you've not pitched anything. You're just simply asking questions. It'll be your job later on then to link your solution, your software solution or your service solution, to the situation that they have explained to you and to that future state situation. If you then are able to, throughout your presentation, link up your whatever it is that you're selling to what they have explained to you as they were answering the I and N type questions, you will have a pitch that will absolutely hit home. You'll have prospects actually sitting there and they'll think, wow, this thing or this service was developed actually exactly for me. All right, and so for the final bit of this video, I want to try and make this a little bit more practical and give you some real examples of what these types of questions could be. So bear with me here, and let's imagine that we're selling a software solution that helps plant managers kind of detect possible issues with production lines. So when a production line or a machine might be up for a maintenance job or might be at risk of actually breaking down, there would be a solution that pings an alert and that allows the maintenance team to go in preemptively and fix it before anything worse happens. And so we're speaking to the plant manager and we're about to ask some I and N questions. Now, they've already told us that they're not using such a solution and that they are just kind of sending in the maintenance teams at regular intervals to do maintenance in the hope that it will solve what it needs to solve, but that they are still ending up with downtime of machines every now and again. So an implication question could be something very open-ended. It could be something along the lines of, so what are some of the downstream consequences of a production line coming to a complete halt because of a machine failure? And so then, the answer could be, well, we're not going to be able to hit our output targets for that given day. Okay, that doesn't sound all that bad, but then you could follow up with a question that tries to steer them in the direction of a more heavily felt consequence. You could, for example, ask, okay, well, if you're not hitting your output, does that mean that your deliveries of certain customer orders will be late? They might say, yeah, we probably might be late with a customer order. You could follow up with a question that asks, okay, well, are there any direct monetary consequences if you're late with your orders? They might say, no, not really. And then you could say, well, but I can imagine that probably it doesn't go down very well with your customers if orders are very late multiple times a year. The answer to that will probably be, yeah, that isn't a great thing. And you could then kind of dig deeper and deeper and deeper and ask, well, have you received complaints? What do you think the consequences are of complaints? Do you think that customers could sometimes completely halt ordering from your business, etc., etc., etc.? You can go down this cascade of trying to pick the consequences and try and get the plant manager in this case to really start at least thinking about the downstream consequences, the lower level consequences of not hitting their output because of machine downtime. And then finally, on the end side of the equation, the need payoff question, again, using that example, you could ask the plant manager the following. You could say, well, if you were to have a machine uptime of about 95%, what other areas would that affect? What would that actually mean for your operations as a whole, as a plant? And then the plant manager will likely start thinking about what life would be like when there's a 95% uptime. And hopefully in this case, you've already figured out earlier on in the call that they currently have something around, for example, 80%. Them or him or her thinking about 95%, what would that do? That question in and of itself is getting them to think, and when they answer it, about what your solution, ideally your solution is what would bring them to 95% in this case, they're thinking about what life would be like, what it would allow them to do. And really at that moment in time, it doesn't matter an awful lot what the answer is as long as you get an answer. And so sometimes you will have to do your homework. You will need to be able to nudge them in that direction with sometimes more closed questions. The example I gave right here and now is a very open-ended question. You're kind of asking them to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of thinking. But the better you get accustomed with your clients, the industry that you work in, your solution, you should have at your disposal already a couple of hints here and there, and you would typically go about getting them there by asking a closed question. So for example, that could be, well, if you have a 95% uptime, would that mean your overall output would increase? Yes, obviously it would increase. Okay, well, to what extent would that be? So what would the actual output volume be? What would be your total production capacity with a 95% uptime? They might give you a number. Okay, so does that mean that you would be able to service more clients? Does that actually mean that you would be able to take on more orders? And so you see what you're doing there is you're actually linking business growth as a more broad concept to, in this case, a simple maintenance optimization tool. And that's kind of where you want to get to. You want to do your homework. You want to make sure that you have those kind of avenues already prepared so that you can also prepare your questions to guide your prospects in that direction. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. That's something that you will have to work on, you will have to analyze, and you will have to try this out multiple times. But I can guarantee when you're always in the same environment, you'll be able to start picking up on cues right and left, and you'll be able to start detecting that, okay, this is that type of business, they're struggling with that type of problem, and so probably I'll be able to kind of nudge them in that direction and kind of make them see how life can be amazing once they start using your solution, start working with your agency, start signing up for your software product. All right, that will be that for this video today. Thank you very much for watching. If you found some value in the content that I created today, a thumbs up would be massively appreciated. If you enjoy some of the other videos on the channel, consider subscribing, and then I hope to see you in one of the next videos. Stay productive, and I will see you very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.